It's servant leadership. It's leading other people for the purpose of accomplishing a goal while God gets glorified and the followers get fulfilled. What other kind of leadership is there? In Mark chapter 10, in the Message, Jesus' words are there. It says this. Just listen to this. It says this. You've observed, he said to his disciples, how godless rulers throw their weight around. And he said, and when people get a little power, it goes to their head. It's not going to be that way with you, he said. Whoever wants to be great must become a servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. That is what the Son of Man has done. He came to serve, not to be served, and then to give away his life in exchange for many who are held hostage. It's hard to find that kind of leadership modeled even in Christian circles today. I don't lead for my own benefit. I lead for the benefit of others. That was a hard teaching from Jesus. In fact, I have said it many times publicly. I've probably said it to this group also over the years, that the major facial expression on the listeners when Jesus spoke was this. Isn't that true? He said, hey, you know something? You want to be great, you got to be a servant. Tell me the audience didn't go, what? What's that all about? The most righteous people during Jesus' time, according to the people, would have been the Pharisees. The religious people, the people who knew all the answers, the people who lived close to God. One day Jesus said, hey, listen to me. Unless your righteousness exceeds those people, you'll never see the kingdom of heaven. Tell me the audience didn't go. There were people who would never have eaten certain foods. They kept the law. In fact, when Syria invaded Israel, they would take Jewish people and try to force them to eat things that were against their dietary laws. And the rule was this: if you don't eat this, we'll cut out your tongue. It was not a problem for a lot of Jewish people. Cut my tongue out. I'll never eat that. And Jesus came along and said, there's nothing that ever will go into you that will defile you. Tell me the audience didn't go. He said, I'm bread. If I stood up here this morning and said, I'm bread, wouldn't you go, ah? He said, I'm water. He said, the last will be first and the first shall be last. He said all kinds of things that cause people to frown. What does that mean? Where's he coming from? There wasn't any concept, though, that was more confusing than when Jesus talked about being a steward. When he said, that which you think is yours really isn't yours. And the audience frowned. Why? Because I like to know that's mine. It's not yours, it's mine. Hey, get your hands off that. That's mine. And Jesus comes along and he says something that's contrary to their thinking and to the teaching, that really isn't yours. And the audience, I believe, they frowned when they heard that. Every time he taught that concept, he taught it in the form of a parable. What's a parable? A parable is a story that reveals a concept that's hard to understand. A parable is a story about a principle you understand, and it is thrown alongside of a concept you don't understand in order that you would understand it. The word parable means to throw alongside of. And when Jesus talked about being a steward, he knew people wouldn't understand that. So every time he taught the principle, he always used a parable. What? To help them understand something that was basically understandable to their thinking and certainly is foreign to our thinking today. What's that? That which you have really isn't yours. Whose car is this over here? That's mine. Wow, that's a nice looking house. That's mine. And that's our attitude. And Jesus comes along and says, that's not really yours. You're a steward. What's that? You don't own it. You just take care of it. That's hard concept to get across. Whoa, wait a minute now. The big screen TV I just bought, that's not mine? The hunting lodge I just invested in, are you telling me that? The yellow Hummer, ooh, is that nice looking? Or are you going to say that's not? It's not yours. How about my family? Nope. But my kids? Hardest concept I ever had to grasp. They're not yours. Give them to him. I didn't do that for a long time. How about my company? Oh. My yellow Hummer, I don't mind giving up, but my company. You see, you have two choices when you hear something like that. Number one is it's mine. I started it, the company. It was my idea. You know, I am the president. I bought it. I'm the only person who's ever run it before. I've been here the longest. I know more about it than anybody else. It's mine. That's a concept. That can be your reaction to the fact that when it comes to your company, you're only a steward. Or you can say, you know something, I'm just a steward. God's given it to me for a certain period of time, and I have the responsibility of overseeing it. Two reactions to the whole principle of what really a lot of times we say is ours, including a company in this case, really isn't ours. You just simply manage it for somebody else. By the way, if you choose number two, what's that? The concept of being a steward in relationship to your company, two things happen. Is this your company? Well, technically speaking, no, it's not. One is this: your whole perspective on running a business changes. Some of you in the room have latched on to that. Maybe not all of you. This really isn't mine. When you really grapple with that and come to terms with that, your whole perspective on the way you see you and your relationship to that which you have changes. It's a gigantic step. But there's something else that I wanted to mention to get into the heart of what I wanted to say this morning, and that's this. When you conclude this really isn't mine, in this case a company, let's use that as an illustration, certain things will gradually change in your life. Certain things will gradually change. Your reaction to running whatever it is you're running will change. Now, you know what? I run a small organization, and I grapple with this myself about my relationship to that organization. And what I want to see change are 5 things. There are 5 evidences of the fact, in my own personal opinion, that, you know something? I don't own this. And when you see those 5 things in my life, your conclusion would be, he's seeing his relationship to that company or that organization as a steward. There are 5 of them, in my opinion. I have 2 sessions with you while we're here. I want to share 2 of them with you this morning. They're not easy teachings. They're tough teachings. A couple guys had a word of prayer with me before I came here, and I said to them, I'm going to talk about something that's pretty tough this morning. I work for an organization called Winning with Encouragement. It's the same Greek word for encourage as for exhortation. I'm going to do more exhorting this morning than I am encouraging. But I really believe in what I'm saying. And all I did was I looked in the mirror, I looked at my own life, and I looked at a relationship I have with an organization. And I said, Walt, are you really a steward of that, or do you own that? Well, there's certain things I observe in my life at particular times that make me happy because it's an evidence of the fact I'm just a steward. And I want to share one of them with you this morning. Here it is. It's not your company. And my 5 talks, I'm going to do 2 of them here. My 5 talks would be, it's not your company, stop doing something. Here's the first one. You ready? It's a tough one. It's not, listen, hey, it's not your company. Stop controlling. That's what I want to talk about this morning. The dictionary says to control is to regulate, oversee, hold in check. I read to you from the Message this morning, from the King James Version, the New King James Version. Jesus said this: you know how the Gentiles lead, don't you? They lord over things. That's control. And then Jesus said this: don't you do that. And a person who sees whatever it is they're in charge of as a steward, guess what? The evidence of the fact they see it as a steward is, one of the evidence is this: they don't control. It's not your company. It's not your business. With respect to how long you've been there, with respect to your title, in deference to your own personal investment, recognizing how much time you spend there, understanding that your name is on the side of the building. I understand all that. With respect to the fact that your dad or your grandfather started the business, with respect to all of that, it's not your company. Stop controlling it. It's not about you. It's not about me. Those who think that way people who control tend to do the following things. They always get their way. They motivate by freaks. Everything has to go through them. They'll do anything to hold on to their position. They pride themselves in being this kind of a person. They're persistent. They're tough. They get things done. They're decisive. These are their strengths, and they are strengths. You take a strength and push it to an extreme, and control people will do that. And you've discovered a weakness. A weakness is a strength pushed to an extreme. No, that was good. Let me say that again. A weakness is a strength pushed to an extreme. And control people will push things to an extreme. You see, we all admire your bulldog tenacity. You know something? After a while, you become a nuisance. Aggressive people are wonderful people for a while, and then they become ogres. And I don't like to be around ogres personally. One man's toughness is another man's insensitivity. God has given me the kind of a personality where I do a lot of talking. I can't stand to listen to other people. I like to talk. I don't like to be around other people who talk a lot. Why? They take my time. I just wait. When you're talking to me, I'm just waiting for you to finish so I can jump in. Because it's my time to talk. And I probably didn't hear you when you said something to me. And I have a winsome, it's just the way God made me. I have a winsome personality. I'm kind of fun to be around. Say, hey, Walt, come on over here. You know, when I used to work in a larger organization, people, hey, Walt, come on in the office. And I was fun to be around. But after a while, even you'll get tired of me. That's true. You say, oh, what isn't he? Just shut up. You invited me to your party to liven up, and after 20 minutes, you wish I'd go home. Why? I think that's a strength I have. You push it to an extreme, and it becomes a weakness. And you know what we will do as control people? We will push and push and push very proudly. Why? To maintain and to hold on to, feeling I have to do all this stuff in order to hold on to this thing and control this thing, which my self-image and my self-worth is totally tied to. Hey, it's not your company. Get your hands off it. Back off. Give us a break. You're just a steward. It's not your company. Stop controlling. What do people who like to control, what do they like to control? 3 things, in my opinion. Number 1, it's obvious, other people. You know, not everybody is as competitive as you. You wish they were. Not everybody is as aggressive as you are. And you've succeeded at something and you say, you know how I got to be successful? I was competitive and I was aggressive. Guess what? Not everybody's like you. Some of you dads in the room or moms in the room who are aggressive or competitive, and you were that way, you're that way at the company, you're that way all the time. And you have a son or a daughter, and they play sports, for instance, and they're not very aggressive. You're like, whose kid is this? That's an inside joke I have with the Carols. I wasn't the most aggressive person playing sports. I remember my sons were not very aggressive. And I said, come on. I remember saying to my older son's coach one time, you know something? He said, your son's a very fine soccer player. I said, I wish he was more aggressive. You know what he said to me? Well, what do you want to have a son who's going to be a bully? I got some of them on my team. I don't like them. See, not everybody is like you. And what we do is when we see people like that, that's Patty and I's marriage title, How to Get Your Mate to Be Like You So You'll Both Be Perfect. Most of you have heard some of that. It's like, what's wrong with this person? They should be like I am. Not everybody is as tireless as you are. You say, well, I don't think the people I work with seem to mind that. I mean, I just met with them last week, and I said, anybody here think I'm too aggressive? Nope, nobody said anything, so I guess I'm all right. They seem to be content. What's that? They're scared to death of you. You know why? Because you're controlling. That's why. They don't tell you that. You're the boss. Get in your face and tell you the wrong thing. Might cost them a paycheck. They're not going to do that. But guess what they're saying behind closed doors? Man, oh man. Is she a tyrant or what? You know, when I was in high school, I was dating this girl. Her dad was the vice president of a lumber mill. And he said to me, hey, Walt, you want a summer job working down at the store, at the lumber mill? And I said, sure. That'd be great. He said, we need somebody to come down there and do some pricing in the store. So I went down there, and there was the president of the company, George Aarons. There were two vice presidents. My friend, by the way, I knew him from church. He was a leader in our church. And a guy named Tom was the other vice president. President, vice president, my friend. I was there, and I got to check around, see what was going on, got to know things, got to know people, heard things said. And one day, this man who asked me if I wanted the job there, I was dating his daughter, he said to me, you know something I wanted to mention to you, Walt? If you hear some people talking around the company, and they're, kind of maybe saying some negative things about me, he said, you know what that is? He said, it's just because I'm the boss. Nobody likes the boss. And I was an impressionable kid. Boy, if I ever become the boss of something, I guess I ought to keep that in mind. Nobody likes a boss. You know the amazing thing to me? Is this guy over here, Tom Jarvie? All the people love Tom Jarvie. He was about as worldly and as wild of a man you'd ever meet in your life. My friend was a leader in our church. I remember being confused. Wait a minute, if that's true, I wonder why everybody likes Tom. And I like Tom too. What a great guy. This man over here wasn't respected at all in the company. He was a boss. He told me it was because he was a boss. No, when I look back at that, it had nothing to do with his title. It had to do with the fact that he was a control freak. And people were, I think, toned down their criticism of the man around me because they knew I was dating his daughter. My goodness, if they were free, I wonder what they would have said about him. Sometimes bosses can be tough. Did you hear about the man that came to his boss and he said, sir, he said, could I have next Tuesday off a little bit early, like maybe 3 o'clock? He said, next Tuesday's my wife and I's 25th wedding anniversary. He said, I could go home at like 3 o'clock. We're going to have a special dinner. Could I leave early next Tuesday? You know what the boss said? Are we going to have to put up with this every 25 years? That's a tough boss, isn't it? See. Guy says to his boss, when do I get my vacation? He said, you remember last week the boss said I was on vacation? He said, yes. So that was your vacation. That's a tough boss. Stop controlling and allow people who have joined you to feel fulfilled and successful. That's your job. Is that your job, or is your job to control them in order that you are fulfilled? Let them run it. Let them breathe. Let them grow. Let them learn. Let them make mistakes. Get your hands off of it. What's an evidence that I recognize that I don't own this company, I'm just a steward? I think there are 5 of them. One of them is this: stop controlling. You have your Bibles with you? Would you do me a favor and turn over to 1 Kings? 1 Kings. page 347. In 1 Kings, in chapter 12 is where I want you to go. This is what's happening. Solomon has been the king of Israel for 40 years, and he has died. His son Rehoboam has come to the throne. When Rehoboam came to the throne, he had some older men giving him some advice. He had some younger men giving him advice on how to run a company. No, how to run a country. And you remember the story. The old man said, you know something, your dad taxed people like crazy. You ought to back off. He put a yoke around the people's necks. He built a home bigger than the temple. He's the wealthiest man in the whole world. He had 27 tons of gold who came to his coffers every year. Guess where it came from? Taxation from the people. They said, why don't you back off? The younger guys said, forget that. Tax them even more. And Rehoboam had to make a decision. I want you to see what is, in my opinion, I've called it this many times in our leadership seminar, the greatest verse in the Bible on servant leadership. A servant leader is not a controller. The greatest verse in the Bible, in my opinion, on servant leadership. 1 Kings chapter 12 and verse 7. The older men spoke to Rehoboam, and they said this, if you will be a servant to these people today, and serve them and answer them and speak good words to them, they'll be your servants forever. I just became the president of a little dinky organization. And nobody on the board with me is a Christian except for my wife, Patty. And I got them together for our first meeting. And I said to them, we talked about our agenda. And I said to them, let me share a little quote with you. I didn't tell them where it came from. They weren't Bible readers. I quoted to them 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 7. And I said, for us to be successful at what we want to try to do as a committee, that's what we have to do for these people we serve. And they were like, they never heard that before. See, we're one of the philosophies of FCCI, I'm not off base here, is that FCCI, it says it right in your manual, that we don't own things. We're stewards of things. One of the evidences that we're doing a good job there is this, that I've taken my hands off and I don't control it. I don't try to control people. You direct people. You give orders to people. There's a big difference between that and controlling them.